In a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, the competition for influence and narrative control between China and the United States becomes increasingly pronounced. A recent study published in Humanities and Social Sciences Communications delves into the discursive reproduction of military images by both nations, revealing how they construct their national identities through language and ideology. The research by Luojia Wang employs a multifaceted analytical framework combining critical discourse analysis, historical approaches, and corpus linguistics to assess how China and the U.S. portray each other's military capabilities and intentions. National image construction has become a vital aspect of international relations, affecting perceptions, soft power dynamics, and diplomatic engagements. Under President Xi Jinping, China has emphasized the importance of effectively communicating its narrative globally, particularly through its military discourse. The study investigates how China presents a positive military image through its official documents, namely the China's Military Defense White Paper (CMD), while contrasting this with the perceptions articulated in the U.S. Department of Defense's China Military Power Report (CMPR). The findings indicate significant disparities between the two nations' narratives. China tends to project a subtle and implicit self-image, focusing on positive attributes such as being a peace-loving nation and a responsible global actor. However, it also engages in othering, depicting the U.S. and other nations negatively to bolster its own narrative. For instance, the CMD frequently emphasizes its military's peaceful intentions while positioning the U.S. as a competitor, thereby legitimizing its military actions through a discourse that highlights regional stability and cooperation. Conversely, the U.S. employs a more overtly critical stance in the CMPR, framing China as a potential threat to international order. The report highlights China's military modernization and strategic ambitions, often portraying these developments as aggressive moves that challenge U.S. hegemony. The CMPR's narrative utilizes a range of discursive strategies, including predication and intensification, to assert that China's military advancements signify a departure from peaceful intentions. The study notes that the ideological underpinnings of these discursive strategies are rooted in each country's historical narratives and geopolitical objectives. The U.S. has historically framed its military presence as a protector of global stability, while China seeks to present itself as a rising power committed to multilateralism and peaceful coexistence. This contrast is particularly evident in how both nations interpret military spending. China emphasizes its relatively lower military budget compared to the U.S. and other major powers, while the U.S. highlights China's growing defense capabilities as a justification for its own military deployments. The implications of these narratives extend beyond mere military posturing; they significantly influence diplomatic relations and public perception. China's efforts to reshape its image through infrastructure projects and economic partnerships in regions like South America are seen as attempts to counterbalance U.S. influence. For instance, recent comments from the Chinese embassy in Guyana emphasize China's substantial investments and infrastructure contributions as evidence of its commitment to the region, particularly in light of growing U.S.-Guyana ties. As the global power dynamics shift, it is clear that the discursive battles over national images are crucial. The ability to frame narratives effectively can enhance a nation's soft power and influence, making it essential for policymakers to understand and engage with the discursive strategies employed by their rivals. This study offers a comprehensive examination of the interplay between self-presentation and external perception in military discourse, providing valuable insights into the future of Sino-US relations. Looking ahead, continued research into different facets of national image construction, beyond military discourse, will be essential. Analyzing how other countries interpret these narratives can offer further understanding of the complexities involved in international relations. The ongoing evolution of these discursive strategies will undoubtedly shape the geopolitical landscape as nations vie for influence and legitimacy in an increasingly interconnected world. As the global economy continues to grapple with the upheaval of trade policies and geopolitical tensions, China is strategically redirecting its economic focus towards partnerships with nations in the global south. This shift was underscored by Chinese Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang's recent remarks at the Boao Forum for Asia, where he emphasized the need for stronger alliances with low and middle-income countries. This approach comes in response to the increasing volatility introduced by U.S. trade policies, particularly those initiated under President Donald Trump. During his keynote address at the forum in Hainan Province, Ding announced that China would implement policies aimed at stabilizing foreign trade and investment. With tariffs on Chinese exports rising, the country is determined to find a growth trajectory that minimizes reliance on the unpredictable U.S. market. The U.S. is never on the side of the global South, remarked Aravind Yilari, an academic at Jawaharlal Nehru University, highlighting a sentiment echoed by many at the conference. As China seeks to bolster its economic ties with countries in Asia and beyond, it currently boasts over a dozen free trade agreements with global South nations. One clear theme at the forum was resilience against U.S. tariffs. Ding's assertion that countries should resolutely oppose trade and investment protectionism served as a rallying cry for nations navigating the tumultuous waters of international trade. Economists such as Zhang Yuyan from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences cautioned that U.S. policies are likely to create major turbulence, yet projected a modest GDP growth of 4.5% for Asia in 2025, indicating a cautious optimism amidst the uncertainty. However, experts have noted that while China's trade with Southeast Asia is increasing, a significant component of this trade may still be indirectly linked to U.S. demand. Brad Sester from the Council on Foreign Relations pointed out that much of China's exports to the global South could simply be a means to circumvent tariffs imposed by the U.S. As such, the critical question remains: can China truly decouple its economy from the U.S.? Looking inward, many economists argue that the path to sustaining economic growth lies in boosting domestic demand. Ding highlighted that in addition to stabilizing foreign investment, efforts would be made to comprehensively expand domestic consumption. This pivot towards internal markets is crucial, especially given that policymakers anticipate exports will contribute little to China's growth in the coming year. Huang Yiping, a noted economist from Peking University, stated that the goal should be to increase consumption's share of GDP to 70% by 2035. A target that underscores the urgency for economic diversification. As tensions escalate and trade wars intensify, particularly with the impending implementation of new tariffs by the Trump administration, dubbed Liberation Day, the global economic landscape is set for further disruption. Trump's recent directives to impose tariffs on a range of imports, including a 25% levy on foreign-made vehicles, have raised concerns among U.S. allies and trading partners. Canada and the European Union are already preparing countermeasures which could lead to a broader economic fallout. In this fraught environment, President Xi Jinping's call to global business leaders for unity and cooperation in maintaining stable supply chains reflects a recognition of the interconnectedness of today's economies. As he stated during a recent meeting with multinational CEOs, we need to work together to maintain the stability of global industry and supply chains, which is an important guarantee for the healthy development of the world economy. The coming months will be critical as China navigates its trade relationships and attempts to solidify its economic footing while facing pressures from U.S. tariffs. The global ramifications of these choices could either fortify China's ambitions as a leader among developing nations or expose vulnerabilities that could hinder its growth. As nations react to unfolding trade policies, the emphasis on collaboration within the global South may prove pivotal in reshaping the future of international trade dynamics. In a move poised to heighten tensions in the Asia-Pacific region, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced a comprehensive strategy to bolster military deterrence against China during his recent visit to the Philippines. This announcement comes amid escalating geopolitical frictions, particularly concerning Taiwan and the contested waters of the South China Sea. Hegseth's statements signal a renewed commitment from the Trump administration to support U.S. allies facing pressure from Beijing. During his visit to Manila, Hegseth underscored the importance of strengthening alliances in the face of perceived threats from the Chinese military, which he described as increasingly aggressive. What we're dealing with right now is many years of deferred maintenance of weakness that we need to re-establish strength and deterrence in multiple places around the globe, he stated at a press briefing alongside Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro. This declaration highlights the U.S. intent to rectify what Hegseth characterized as the repercussions of previous administrations' policies that in his view embolden adversaries like China. The U.S. has pledged to enhance its military cooperation with the Philippines, which includes a significant $500 million fund aimed at modernizing the Philippine military. Hegseth's remarks reflect a broader strategy to reinforce U.S. presence in the region, marking a shift away from what he termed the false optimism regarding China's military ambitions. This initiative is particularly critical as China continues to assert its claims over the South China Sea, an area rich in resources and vital for global trade. In a series of meetings, Hegseth reassured Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. that the U.S. would remain a steadfast partner. Friends need to stand shoulder to shoulder to deter conflict, to ensure that there is free navigation, whether you call it the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea, he remarked, emphasizing the necessity for unity among allies in the face of potential threats. Adding to the military dialogue, Hegseth announced the upcoming deployment of advanced military systems, including an anti-ship missile system and unmanned sea vessels, for joint military exercises scheduled for next month. These exercises aim to enhance the operational readiness of U.S. and Philippine forces and strengthen their capabilities to defend Philippine sovereignty. The backdrop of this dialogue includes a series of confrontations in the South China Sea where tensions have surged between Chinese and Philippine naval forces. With China claiming nearly the entire South China Sea, the Philippine government has sought to solidify its alliances with other nations, further complicating regional dynamics. We must be prepared to deter any possibility in the future for our mutual defense and the defense of freedom and international law, Teodoro stated, reflecting a shared commitment to regional security. China, however, has responded sharply to the U.S. military's increased presence. Officials in Beijing labeled the U.S. as a predator in the region, warning that its military cooperation with the Philippines could undermine regional peace. The United States has an astonishing record of breaking its promises and abandoning its allies, a Chinese spokesperson commented, highlighting the fraught relationship between these powers. As Hegseth continues his visit, which also includes a stop in Japan, the implications of his announcements will likely reverberate throughout the region. The U.S. strategy under the Trump administration aims not only to deter potential aggressors but also to reassure allies of America's commitment to their defense. Observers will be closely watching how these developments unfold, particularly as they relate to the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific and the ongoing situation surrounding Taiwan. The evolving nature of U.S.-China relations, marked by military posturing and diplomatic engagements, suggests that the region stands at a critical juncture, with tensions simmering. The commitment to deterrence and the strengthening of alliances may shape the security landscape in the coming months as nations navigate the complexities of defense and diplomacy in the face of an assertive China.